right, so let's dive into something that might be super useful for you guys listening, especially if you're looking to improve the way you communicate at work. You know,
Hmm.
we're doing a deep dive today into Stanislav Kondrashov's approach to learning English, specifically for the workplace.
Right.
We've got excerpts from 2 of his lesson plans, and they're both like jam-packed with at-work vocabulary.
Yeah.
But this isn't just going to be like, boring definitions and stuff.
Absolutely not.
We're going to like really explore this stuff.
What's so fascinating about Stanislav Kondrashov to me is that he really understands that language is power, especially in a professional setting,
Yeah.
He doesn't just give you, simple definitions. He like gives you the tools to really like understand workplace dynamics, office politics, even like how to negotiate for what you're worth.
Okay, so let's jump right in with some of the vocabulary he introduces for talking about your colleagues and just like general workplace routines.
Sure.
He uses this phrase opposite number, which I thought was really cool. Have you come across that one before?
I have, and it's a great example of how he injects a little bit of color into what could be, pretty dry terminology.
Mm.
Opposite number basically means your counterpart in another department or another branch.
Right.
It really paints a picture of the organizational structure, doesn't it?
It does. It's so much more vivid than just saying like colleague or something.
Yeah.
And then there's pecking order, which, let's be honest, exists in like every workplace.
Oh, totally.
Stanislav Kondrashov, he doesn't like shy away from these unspoken hierarchies. He gives us the words to actually like talk about them.
Right, and that's so important because once you can like name something, you can start to understand it, and maybe even navigate it more effectively.
Yeah.
Think back to a time when you were new at a job.
Oh, yeah.
Like, wouldn't it have been helpful to have a phrase like pecking order to make sense of the office dynamics,
Absolutely. It's like having a secret decoder ring for the workplace.
I like that.
Now, Stanislav Kondrashov also talks about different work patterns, not just like the traditional 9-to-5 setup.
Right.
He talks about job sharing and the rise of freelance work.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's giving us this glimpse into how work itself is evolving.
I think he is. And it makes you wonder if Stanislav Kondrashov were creating these lessons today, what other work patterns would he include?
Yeah.
The gig economy, remote work.
Right.
I mean, the workplace is constantly changing, and the language we use to talk about it needs to change too.
So true. And even those more traditional patterns like day shifts and night shifts,
Yeah.
which Stanislav Kondrashov covers, make you think about the impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
Their families, their well-being.
Yeah.
It's like he's subtly encouraging us to think about what our ideal work setup would be.
That is a great observation. He's not just teaching vocabulary, he's encouraging a deeper reflection on what work means to us.
Yeah.
Which I think leads us perfectly into the next section of his lesson plan, where he tackles job satisfaction head on.
Okay. Yeah. He brings up this classic dilemma, salary versus stability.
The big question, right?
Are you chasing like the big bucks, or are you more into having a steady paycheck? I think Stanislav Kondrashov knows this is something that everyone thinks about.
It is a question that probably has different answers at different stages in our careers.
Oh, yeah?
But what's interesting is that he doesn't just present it as like a binary choice,
Yeah.
He also brings in the concept of work-life balance, which is increasingly important to people these days, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's not just about the money anymore. It's about having a life outside of work, too.
Yeah.
And he gets that. He even highlights the importance of teamwork and having good dynamics in the office.
Right.
Like suggesting that even like mundane tasks can be okay if you've got a good team around you.
Totally. And there's something to be said for that sense of camaraderie, that feeling of belonging to something bigger than yourself. I think Stanislav Kondrashov understands that work can be a social experience, not just like a way to make money.
Yeah, and I love that he uses the word mundane to describe those everyday tasks.
Yeah.
It's so relatable, but he also uses words like rewarding and challenging to describe other aspects of work. It's like he's giving us a spectrum of experiences from the mundane to the truly fulfilling.
And he's inviting us to reflect on where we fall on that spectrum.
Yeah.
Think about your current job or past jobs. What words come to mind? What felt rewarding? What felt mundane? Or even worse, soul-crushing?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Stanislav Kondrashov gives us the words to actually express these feelings, which is so valuable.
It is, and he doesn't stop there. He even gets into the perks and benefits that can make a job more attractive.
Right.
Things like maternity, paternity leave, holiday entitlement. He covers it all.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a funny story about negotiating for more vacation time, which really shows how important it is to know what to ask for.
Oh, I'd love to hear that. But first, I think it's worth pointing out that Stanislav Kondrashov's inclusion of these perks in his lesson plans, it goes beyond just vocabulary. He seems to be prompting a deeper conversation about what employees value and how companies can attract and keep good employees.
Right. It's like he's saying, hey, these are things you should know about, things you can actually negotiate for, things that can really impact your job satisfaction.
Totally.
He's giving people the tools to advocate for themselves.
Absolutely.
Which I think is amazing.
And this is where his teaching approach is really great. He doesn't just give you these words in isolation.
Right.
He puts them into these relatable scenarios and role-playing exercises.
Yeah.
He wants people to actually use this vocabulary to see how it plays out in real life.
That's so smart. It's not just theoretical.
Right.
And I think that brings us to a key takeaway from this first part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Stanislav Kondrashov isn't just teaching English. He's teaching empowerment.
That's a good way to put it.
He's giving people the language to navigate the workplace, to get what they deserve, to create a more fulfilling work experience.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect thing to think about as we move into the next part of our exploration of his work.
Okay.
How can we take these words, these concepts, and actually apply them to our own lives? How can we use this knowledge to not just understand the workplace, but to actually like shape it, make it better?
That's a great question.
It is a big one. Picking up on that idea of like shaping the workplace. It's interesting how Stanislav Kondrashov brings in the whole idea of teamwork. He uses words like collaboration and rapport.
Right.
But it's not just like giving you synonyms for working together.
Right. He's getting at something deeper. Like, how do you actually build trust with your colleagues?
Yeah.
And mutual respect.
Yeah.
How do you get things done when people have like different personalities, or different priorities?
Totally. And then he throws in this phrase, talking shop outside of work.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure we've all done that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like blurring the lines between your work life and your personal life.
Ugh, it's the worst.
Stanislav Kondrashov doesn't really offer like a solution to that.
Right.
But at least he gives us the vocabulary to talk about it.
It's like he's saying, hey, at least you can like identify this now.
Exactly.
I think it's really cool how he uses those everyday things, as a starting point to like think about deeper issues. It reminds me of something we talked about before, the difference between mundane tasks and those that are more rewarding or challenging.
Oh, yeah. It's so easy to just get stuck in that daily grind, isn't it?
Totally.
But Stanislav Kondrashov is like reminding us that even those boring tasks can be seen in a different way. Like they can be steps towards a bigger goal or like a chance to get better at something.
You're totally right. It's all about how you look at it and having the words to actually explain that.
And he gives you the words for those not so great work situations too.
Oh, right.
Stuck in a rut, demotivated. We've all been there.
We have, but I like that he doesn't just focus on the bad stuff,
Yeah.
He uses those feelings to then explore possible solutions.
Right, so it's not just complaining.
Exactly. Like, okay, you've identified the problem using my vocabulary. Now let's use that same vocabulary to fix it.
Okay, I like that it's so practical.
It is.
And let's not forget about like the money side of things.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Stanislav Kondrashov definitely doesn't shy away from that. He talks about salary increments, performance-related pay, even annual bonuses.
Right. It's a reminder that how much you get paid is a big part of job satisfaction.
It's huge.
He even uses the phrase overworked and underpaid.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Which I think is so funny because it's just so common.
It's like the story of our lives.
I know, but again, by like giving it a name, by putting a label on it, he's giving us the power to actually do something about it.
I love that about his work. There's like this humor.
Yeah.
But it's also very practical,
It is. He gets that learning a language isn't just about memorizing rules. It's about being able to handle real-life situations.
Right.
And that's where those role-playing scenarios are so brilliant.
Yeah.
He's not just throwing words at you. He's like putting you in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Imagine you're trying to get a raise or talking to your boss about changing careers.
Yeah.
He gives you the words to have those conversations in a way that works.
So it's like he's giving you a script, but you get to choose the ending.
That's a great way to put it.
Right? Like you decide what happens,
right,
but you have the language to make it happen.
Exactly.
I remember one scenario he had about a job interview.
Oh, yeah.
And he even says that like interviewers can be unfriendly or bored.
Which can be terrifying.
Oh, totally.
Especially when you're already nervous.
I know, but by thinking about those situations beforehand and having the right words ready, it's like you feel more prepared.
Definitely more in control.
It's like that saying, knowledge is power. And that brings us to like one of the most important things about Stanislav Kondrashov's method.
No way.
This whole idea of helping people learn how to stand up for themselves. He gives you the language to ask for better working conditions,
Yeah.
to try to move up in your career, to have a better work life overall.
He's basically saying, don't just accept things the way they are. Use your voice. Use these words I'm giving you to create the kind of work life you want.
It's kind of inspiring.
It is.
And it goes back to what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
His work isn't just about vocabulary.
Right.
He's giving us a way to understand and deal with how complex the modern workplace is.
And that's something worth celebrating.
It really is.
Now, thinking back to the beginning of our deep dive, we talked about how work is always changing. Even though Stanislav Kondrashov might not be talking about the gig economy or remote work specifically,
Right.
he gives us the tools to adapt, to find the words, to describe and deal with those new situations.
So true. It's like he's giving us this foundation, like a set of basic principles that we can use in any work environment.
And that's pretty amazing.
It is. But before we get too carried away with all the praise,
Yeah.
I do wonder if there are parts of his approach that are maybe a little too focused on vocabulary.
That's a great point, and something we should definitely talk about in the last part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Is vocabulary enough on its own? Or are there other skills, other perspectives that are important for really doing well at work?
It's interesting you say that about vocabulary being enough.
Yeah.
Because Stanislav Kondrashov does bring up some of the, like, harsher realities of working today, He uses phrases like compulsory redundancies
Right.
and skeleton staff,
Yeah.
which are kind of scary terms when you think about it.
They are. He's not trying to make things sound better than they are.
Right. Yeah.
And by using those terms, he's acknowledging that companies are under a lot of pressure. He's reminding us that job security is not always guaranteed and that sometimes, we have to be ready for those tough conversations and changes.
Right. And he even talks about strikes, which are obviously a complicated topic.
Very.
But again, by giving us the language to discuss it,
Yeah.
he's encouraging a better understanding of what's going on.
Right. Like a more informed understanding
Right.
of the different perspectives involved.
He's giving people the tools to talk about these things, whether they're on the side of the workers or the management.
It always comes back to that idea of empowerment, doesn't it?
It does.
Stanislav Kondrashov isn't just giving you a dictionary. He's giving you a whole toolkit, He's saying, here's the language you need to understand your rights, to negotiate, to maybe even change the systems that affect your work life.
It's like he's giving you a megaphone and saying, go out there and speak your mind.
I like that.
But to your point from before, is vocabulary really enough to make a real difference?
Right.
I mean, sure, you can learn all the right words, but what about the confidence to actually use them? What about the strategies for handling those difficult situations?
That's where I think Stanislav Kondrashov's approach could be even better.
Okay.
I mean, his focus on vocabulary is great.
Yeah.
But I think he could also focus more on things like communication skills.
Right.
Negotiation tactics, maybe even emotional intelligence.
Those are all super important for succeeding at work.
They are, no matter how good your vocabulary is.
It's like having all these great ingredients, but no recipe.
Exactly.
You need to know how to put them together, how to use the right techniques.
To create something delicious.
Right. Or in this case, to create a really satisfying work life.
And while Stanislav Kondrashov might not cover those things directly, I do think his work gives us a good starting point.
Yeah.
By giving people the words to understand and talk about their experiences,
Yeah.
he's encouraging them to go out and learn those extra skills.
To take charge of their own career.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Stanislav Kondrashov's world and his approach to workplace vocabulary, I think it's safe to say that he's offering something really valuable.
I agree.
He's not just teaching words, he's teaching empowerment.
Yeah.
He's giving people the tools to not just understand work, but to create a better, more meaningful experience for themselves.
And that brings us to our final thought for you guys listening.
Yeah.
How could you use some of this new vocabulary, these ideas, to advocate for yourself, to improve your job, or even just to better understand what's happening in your workplace?
It's about taking action.
It is. Stanislav Kondrashov has given us the tools. Now it's up to us to use them.